Hello everyone. This week we will be working on the business case for your project. Okay, so let's start talking about the business case itself. These are the items in the template file that you're going to need to account for in your business case. This is an important document. This is the one that is presented to the program manager that shows the need to allocate capital for your project. The more detail you have and the more clearly defined your explanations are, the more likely you will receive the monies for your project. So these are the different items in that template that you're going to need to write about. Let's look at the first one, the introduction and background. Here's where you can restate what your project is and its overall goals. But now you need to give more information on why you chose this project. This relates maybe like to a Rubik Cube and how the project fits into the scheme of the new vision of our new company. Here's where you might have to do some research. Whatever your project is, there's information about this on the internet. So take a look at the reasoning why others might have implemented this type of project and then come up with your own version. You could include your opportunities from your SWOT here also. Something that you'll notice as a lot of the tools that we work on you'll be using information from previous tools and maybe expanding upon them. And that's actually what's going to happen in this case also. Let's look at the business objective. You've already stated an objective for your project. You can now expand on this statement. Is it growth of the business, or more profits, better service, more efficiency, or even a new product? Whatever your project is, there needs to be a legitimate business need. Here's where you give it life, stating in very clear, non-ambiguous terms the objectives of your project. We now look at the current situation and a problem or opportunity statement. In other words, we're going to look at a gap. For those of you who have already had the class in designing learning, you'll understand this gap as being either of knowledge, skill, or attitude, or in other words, why you're producing the training intervention. It is the same here. You need to explain the state of affairs now as it pertains to the organization, and then where you think the organization should be. The result is an opportunity statement, or maybe a problem-solving statement. Here's where you give depth to the reasoning behind your project. In other words, the current situation in the company is this, and we think it can be highly improved upon by our project. The details of the current situation should be explained in great depth here. So this is the current situation problem-opportunity statement. You can think of it as the gap. You're going to have some critical assumptions and constraints within your project, and you need to define those. What is critical to the success of your project? What cooperation do you need? Here's where you can be creative and state what you will have access to within the organization, or for that matter, what you will not have access to. Will you have access to personal records? What level of communication do you need in order to organize your project? So you need to state these as the critical assumptions that are really actually critical to your project, and any constraints that you might have. Now you're going to have you're going to analyze or have an analysis of the options and make recommendations for your project. So now that you've documented your current situation and problem or opportunity, and have established your critical assumptions and constraints, you can now analyze this information and then make a recommendation at what level you should proceed with your project. The options are maybe do nothing, the problem is not as bad as we thought, or you might have a project with limited resources and therefore limited risk, or you could have a project with maximum impact, maximum risk and reward. So all of you are going to need to select that third option. You want to have a project with maximum impact, risk, and reward. So you need to state in terms of your project why you chose option 3. So now you're going to analyze your options and make recommendations on how you should proceed with your project. You're now going to start thinking about the actual producibles of your project, the actual work that will be performed. For each of your projects, you will have major areas of work, major categories, and within these areas you will have smaller pieces of work. So now that you have described your project and gathered data, you can now start thinking about what kind of work needs to happen in order for the project to be a success. This is an important area of the overall project because you will use this list later as you produce your work breakdown structure. So here's where you'll state your preliminary project requirements. Okay, let's talk about the budget estimate and financial analysis now. Here's where you will state how much of that money your project will need. But you should give some type of rationale for some of the major areas of what your project plan will cost. You've identified these in the preliminary estimates from the previous slide, but now you're going to put monetary value on those. So you're going to give some type of rationale for some of the major areas of what your project will cost. And that would be in the budget estimate. Let's look at the schedule estimate. Now there's no need to pull your hair out over establishing a budget estimate, but you will pull your hair out if you don't provide a good estimate on the cost of your project. So now that you have a ballpark figure of what the project plan will cost, you now need to spread it out over 4 years. This corresponds with the business case financial spreadsheet. Let's look now at the potential risks involved. There's always risk involved in a project, no matter what the size. The larger the project, with its demand on capital and justifiable results, the more important it is to define the risk and establish how this will be planned for. The strategies to manage risk could include transferring the risk to another party, avoiding the risk, reducing the negative impact of the risk, and accepting some or all of the consequences of a particular risk. This section of your business case identifies the various risk items. Later on, you will produce an actual risk management document in more detail. Again, all you were doing in this section is identifying the risk items.